Here we are, Chapter 13. We're going to be talking about how to use your language correctly when you are giving your speech. So it's entitled Wording the Speech. We want to make sure you get all your information across correctly. And one thing you need to know is that words are very powerful. Advertising agencies have known for years that words are extremely persuasive and informative, and that they can actually increase the sales of a product if they put in certain words like new, quick, easy, improved, now, suddenly, amazing, and even the word introducing, like that's something, but it is. Now, you know why there's a lot of products on TV that are advertised as new and improved? Well, scientifically, it's been proven that those words can actually improve the sales of a product. There was actually a study done when you think about the power of the words. There was a controlled study group. They were shown two groups. One group was shown an accident, a vehicle accident, and another group was shown the same actual video. But afterwards, after they watched the same wreck, the first group was asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? And the second group was actually asked, how fast were the cars going when they hit one another? So you can tell the difference. One group heard the word smashed and one group heard the word hit. And the viewers who were asked the word smashed were given a much higher, when they were asked how fast were they going, gave a much higher estimate of speed. And as a matter of fact, a whole entire week later, they were more likely to state that there was broken glass at the accident scene, even though there was no broken glass in the video at all. And why was that? Why was the group who was given the word smashed, why did they give an overestimate of how fast the car was going? And why did a week later they recall that there was glass? Well, it's because the word smash actually suggests a higher speed and greater destruction than the word hit. So just a single word can distort our memory of what we've actually seen with our own eyes. It's amazing how you have to be careful in the judicial system. Lawyers have to be careful with the way they word questions. You can actually influence a juror on the positive or the negative just by putting in different words. We have to use appropriate words when we speak. You can never make political or religious references, racial or ethnic or sexual references, anything like that, that may alienate anyone in your audience. So basically you do this. You ask yourself, is there any chance at all that what I'm planning to say might offend someone in the audience? And if that's the case, don't use it. Okay? That's really the rule of thumb. Am I going to offend or alienate anyone? If the answer could possibly be yes, choose more appropriate words. Stay away from language that reflects sex-related stereotypes, such as little old lady or broad, chick, or a typical male brutality. These are just things that are stereotypical. You want to eliminate any kind of sexism from sex-linked occupation terms. You need to say worker instead of workman, or firefighter instead of fireman, or housekeeper instead of cleaning lady. You just have to use those appropriate words that are not stereotypical. Remember, you're trying not to alienate or offend anyone in your listening audience. You also want to avoid the sexist pronoun usage. For instance, every driver should buckle his seatbelt before he starts the engine. Well, what if you're talking about a woman? That doesn't apply. So instead of saying his and he in the masculine form, just substitute their and they. All drivers should buckle their seatbelt before they start the engine. Not only do you want to use words appropriately, you want to use them accurately. And you guys can kind of travel back into your English journeys and think about denotation and connotation. You must use precise denotation of words. Now, if you're sitting there listening and you're thinking, what is a denotation? Just equate it to the word dictionary. Denotation, dictionary, they both start with a D. It's the dictionary definition of a word. And a lot of times as speech makers, we have to make sure that we give definitions of words so that the audience can follow along with us. For instance, the slide here says, when does middle age begin? Well, guess what? It kind of depends upon who you're talking to. If you are a man or a woman who is about 30 to 34, you're going to say that middle age probably starts around the year 40. But let's say you're 40 like I am and you're 40 to 44, we would be more typical to say that it's 45. Middle age begins at 45. So if middle age is a very important point or concept in your speech, you need to define exactly what age span you mean by the term. You have to give precise denotation so your audience will follow along. You also need to control your connotations. Now, that's the opposite. This is not the dictionary word, but it's the emotional attachment that a word has. For instance, think about the words, you want to think about skinny, thin, and slender, okay? So you've got slender, thin, and skinny. Well, the connotation of the word slender actually has a positive connotation. It's more like someone who's athletic. So slender is good. Thin, however, it just has a neutral connotation. It's not positive or negative. But the word skinny has negative overtones attached to it, meaning that maybe that person is unhealthy. Imagine that a TV station is given a report on this group of people right here that you see on your screen. This group of people. Is this a rally, a gathering, or a mob? Think about those three words. All three would apply here. But rally has a positive connotation. These people have met together for a positive solution to something. Or maybe it's just a gathering of people. Well, that's neither negative or positive. That's just a group of people who gathered together. But a mob has that negative connotation to it. So you can see that when you are speech making, you have to be careful with the word selection that you use, because all three of these words and terms do describe this group, but they have different connotations. Use the correct one. This probably needs to go without saying, but it doesn't, because guess what? We say things uniquely here in the South. We have to use correct grammar. People are going to perceive you as intelligent or not according to the grammar that you use. So here's the wrong way. She don't. She don't know any better. That's what we would say. But the correct grammar usage is she doesn't know any better. We have to make sure we use the correct form of these words. How about you was? You was at the store, right? No, that's not correct. You say you were at the store. That's what we need to go for. Look at the next one. I had went to McDonald's. No, I had gone to McDonald's. And then the last one, here's one that is kind of common for us to get wrong, is the difference between hisself and himself. He punched himself in the face. No, he punched himself in the face. You have to be careful with your grammar usage. You want to be perceived as knowledgeable in what you're talking about. And not only do we need to do accurate words, and we also need to use appropriate words, we need to achieve clarity with the things that we are saying. We don't need to be foggy with the things we're saying. We want clarity, no confusion. Can your audience understand what you're saying? If they can't, well, maybe some of these things will help you out. You need to strive for simplicity. A lot of times we want to make ourselves sound more intelligent by using larger words and larger phrases. Look at this phrase here. It is important to advise all parties concerned to take immediate and expeditious action to vacate the premises. Well, yeah, but here's a better way to say it. Tell everyone to get out of the house as quickly as possible. You know, if you, it's exactly the same thing. These have the same meanings, but the one on the bottom is just more clear. It's simple, and you're going to reach more people in your audience by using the more common phrase. Tell everyone to get out of the house as quickly as possible. The other one, it's too wordy, so don't use it. You also need to use precise words. You have to be careful of this thing called doublespeak. Now, what doublespeak is, it's actually language that is deliberately misleading or inflated. And there's two different types of doublespeak. There's a thing called a euphemism, which is really a mild, indirect, or vague word that's used in place of one that is harsh or it could be offensive. Think about politicians. They say, instead of raising taxes, which has that negative connotation, it becomes a revenue enhancement, which has the more positive slant to it. We also use things like Like when people pass away, they're actually dead. But to say that they're dead seems a little bit harsh, doesn't it? So you use other words, you use euphemisms to almost soften things like that. No, he passed away. He's no longer with us. No, he's dead. But in society today, you don't go around saying he did and he's dead and he's dead and she's dead. No, you say, oh, they've passed away. They've gone on. We say things like that. Another type of doublespeak is this thing called inflated language. And these are inflated words that are designed to puff up the importance of a person or a thing that is being described. In some communities, garbage collectors become sanitation engineers. Or how about the guy who washes your car? Instead of a car wash attendant, they become a corrosion control specialist. So these are different types of doublespeak, but it's just inflated language. It's making something more important than it really is. You don't want to misuse jargon either, and jargon is all that technical language that a group of people has, or like a profession has. It's okay to use jargon if you're actually speaking to colleagues who all know what you're talking about, who possibly are in your field. But if you're speaking to people outside of your field, you should avoid jargon, or if you do use it, you have to explain it so that that your audience can follow along. An example of jargon could be the teenager's maladaptive mania episode. Well, that will work if we're in the psychology realm. However, most of us just need this, the teenager's wild and crazy outburst. That's what we need to hear as common folk. So don't misuse jargon. But if there is something you have to use that you really feel you need to use, you need to define it. You've got to let us know exactly what it is. In addition, use some vivid language. Imagery is that wonderful stuff that you can put into your speech to kind of build interest for your audience. For instance, look at this photo. Now, imagine that you're going to describe this scene to an audience, but they don't have the photo in front of them. You have to paint a picture with your words so that the listeners visualize this scene in their minds. What you would be creating here is imagery. Words that evoke mental pictures or images. The way to create imagery in a speech is really to use a lot of specific details, which are like the brush strokes on a canvas that an artist is making. Imagery is a great use of vivid language. You can also use metaphors and similes. You guys are very familiar with these. And metaphors are just a comparison. Enemy submarines were sharks that prowled the sea for prey. You can definitely use these. And a simile is very similar. It's the same as a metaphor, except that you use the word like or as. Enemy submarines were like sharks that prowled the sea for prey. I don't know exactly why we have these huge distinctions between metaphors and similes, but we do. It's a rule, so we follow them. You can also use rhetorical devices, and these are also things you would be familiar with from like your English classes. Alliterations are just words that simply start with the same consonant. Baby boomers, so soft and silky. Here's one you don't think about being an alliteration, but Coca-Cola is actually an alliteration. It's something that helps your audience remember the words and the terms that you're using. You can also use this thing called an antithesis, and this is a rhetorical device in which you sharply contrast an idea and it's kind of juxtaposed in this balanced structure. For example, he has cool hands but a warm heart. This device has been used in a lot of great historical speeches, including John F. Kennedy's famous words, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." That's the antithesis. It kind of flips things around and makes it totally different. You can also use parallel structure and repetition. This is also another effective rhetorical device. Like, we want a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Well, that's a parallel structure there. Or you can use some repetition. We must work hard to, and make a point. We must work hard to, make a point. We must work hard to, and their audience is going to remember, I think we need to actually work hard to do something. So, there is a big difference between oral and written language. You have to be careful about that. Don't be impetuous. These written words are straightforward, but if you speak them in a speech, they may go by too fast. The audience needs time to absorb this idea. In oral communication, you need to expand this advice to something like, don't rush into a project with a full burst of energy and emotion. Slow down. Think about what you're doing before you act. See, there's differences. The written word can get away with 3 simple words, but the oral version of the same thought needs to be a little more slowed down. All right, so here's a little preview for you coming up on an M2 speaking that you've got going on. We're going to be looking over really soon a thing called prep method, which is really the point position stated, your reason for having that position, to your given example, and then you're going to restate your point in your position. But we're not going to get into that too much today. This is going to be for next week when you actually have your impromptu speaking speech assigned to you, and you're going to be doing one, so you may want to start cracking open that book and finding all the impromptu information that you can find so that you can be successful. We'll dive into that next week.